Tiger Woods flipped his car again. He did it again. We have some details from our producer. I think I read that he was intoxicated at the time. At least that's the accusation. He went to jail for it. He is a very successful professional athlete, one of the most successful of all time. There's a long line of professional athletes who have done things that have gotten them in trouble off the field, off the golf course, off the court. And this incident apparently got our producer Jones thinking about this and what our thoughts are on these types of events and how the public reacts. So, Jones, give us a little background on the situation and what you're thinking about talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Tiger Woods, this is not the first sort of incident he's had in his career. And I saw a lot of conversation going on around, like, does this basically end his career? Does this sort of like, is this a career because it's, because it's a multiple infraction at this point? Does this sort of like end the Tiger Woods era as we've known it? Is he done in golf? And
I think he was already done, like, sort of.
Yeah, but he was still competing, right?
Also, there's like lots of potential opportunities golf-wise for him for the next 30 years, like sponsorship stuff where he shows up. He just plays the Masters. He does like big things with the Saudis. Like there's hundreds of millions of dollars for him if he's not finished in golf versus if he is.
Yeah. And it got me thinking. I'm not trying to come to any judgment about what happened with Tiger Woods, but like there are these sort of moments that happen in sports where, like, it's sort of like there's either the league or societally we decide that somebody has crossed a line and they're done. But then there's also times when I'm like surprised that doesn't happen, maybe, and then there's some times where I'm surprised that it does. And so I thought we could just maybe talk about the types of infractions that maybe go on in sort of our media culture and what we think of those things in terms of like how both leagues react to them and society reacts to them.
Well, this is going to be a dark episode, I feel. We're going to get dark on this one. It's going to be sad. I don't think there's going to be a lot of laughing, guys. I'm hoping that we can have a little bit of fun with it. But
I mean, if you guys like decide to enjoy yourselves instead of like it's funeral feeling over here, man. It's so intense.
Well, we'll try. I mean, there's some infractions that are funnier than others. There are some that are not funny at all. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. There's no way you could say stuff about it and be like, that was funny. Like there's no chance.
True. It's true.
There's a whole line of jokes that I've like censored myself already on since we started.
I am like currently every word that comes into my brain is getting an extra check before it exits the mouth right now. I know how this goes. We got to be careful on this one. So this is a sensitive one, but you know what? Let's just dive in. Fuck it. Who cares? Okay. Tiger Woods is the event that precipitated us talking about this. So let's talk more about Tiger Woods and what has happened with him so far. So correct me if I'm wrong. We never want to get anything wrong about anything like this. We talked about this before the show recording started. We don't want to talk about a historical event that happened with a famous person and get something wrong about some infraction that they've done and over-accuse them of something that they didn't do. So my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that Tiger Woods now has 2 events driving his car where he ends up in a crash and he was intoxicated both times. And it's, as far as I know, confirmed that he was intoxicated. Is that correct?
Certainly in the first incident, it's confirmed. In the second one, I mean, I guess we should say allegedly at this point. I mean, I don't think that he in the most recent incident, he tested negative for alcohol but refused a drug test.
Okay,
and that was so maybe where he was charged because you're not allowed to. I mean, you're obviously allowed to refuse it, but that results in a charge from the Florida whoever did this, the Florida law.
No, this is just police. A twinkle.
I'm thinking it's the police, but maybe not. Maybe just the Florida
I don't know if it's county,
Society.
state, whatever. Whoever arrested him, right? It's a charge that comes under there.
There's a twinkle in my memory that the first incident was not alcohol either. It was like painkillers or something like that. Does that sound familiar?
It sounds familiar.
It sounds familiar.
He's been around for a long time, been in the public eye for a long time, so he's had a few. There was something, and I don't know if this is the same as the first incident, where I don't know if it was Elin Woods, but someone like had a golf club and like smashed the back.
It was his
of
wife when she found out about all his cheating. She started
Is that what
smashing
that
his
was?
car.
Oh, okay.
He was like trying to get out of the driveway, and
And she was just like breaking shit.
yeah.
Fair enough.
yeah.
And he was also in 2017, prior to that first crash, he was arrested under prescription drug. He had a prescription, illegal prescription drug arrest. So he's had, a series of these. It's maybe likely that it follows that if prescription drugs have been a problem, maybe that's what we're dealing with here too.
I mean, he had like completely fucked up his leg and back from playing golf, right? Because of the power of his swing, and like you swing. I when I was younger, I never thought about how golf injuries could obviously happen over time, but like it's so one-sided what you're doing with your body, and you're using a lot of power. And Tiger Woods, I think, he's probably a victim of being prescribed medicines and not getting off of them, would be my guess. And I'm not saying victim like he's all completely faultless here, but like I think that happens to a lot of people. And I don't know, like we said, there's going to be different levels of scrutiny on different incidents. And obviously driving intoxicated that results in these types of crashes is not good. It's good that nobody ever died or anything, but of course somebody could have. And that's why the DUIs exist, because we don't want people to die. And Tiger Woods was putting people at risk. So that should not be made small in this discussion. But thinking about Tiger Woods specifically, the Tiger Woods experience of his life, I kind of like, he's rich as hell and famous and he's had a lot of success, but I feel like that he's had a rough fucking life, honestly. I really feel that way. Like from the very beginning, I think it's well reported that his father was very tough on him. He was like a star from a young age, all of this pressure and then the injuries to follow. I think it was kind of inevitable that he's got some of these types of problems, and that should not be forgotten in all of this, I think. But
I mean,
of course,
I disagree pretty strongly with what you're saying. I think if you go through most people's lives, certainly most athletes, most elite athletes, they have people pushing them very hard, often their parents, often there's a lot of really fucked up relationship stuff happening, fucked up money stuff happening, and not everybody is driving their car while they're high on whatever prescription drugs into poles or whatever it is that happened multiple times here. By the way, to be clear, I don't think it's a big deal that this happened, but I don't think we should excuse it either and act like this is just like, oh, well, he had a hard life, so this is sort of like almost an inevitability. I'm putting words in your mouth a little bit, but only a little, I think. In my mind, like, I don't know, I can name lots of people who have unbelievable scrutiny on them who don't do this. Lots and lots and lots of people. So in my mind, like, I think he should bear full responsibility for it. The question then, to me, becomes, what does full responsibility mean? I don't think this means anything about the end of his golf career, to the first part of your question. I think it doesn't affect his golf career in any real way. I think they'll be excited whenever he wants to come back. All of golf will be excited to have him back. He's going to have to Bill Cosby it to be out of golf, I mean, yeah. I don't know how else. I mean, it's going to have to be really dark shit for Tiger not to be loved and welcomed in. And even then, he does some dark shit. Give it 10 years. They'll probably welcome him back anyway, because he is the face of golf and has been forever at this point.
I agree, but it's also results-oriented, right? Because the reason this law exists is because people can die due to his behavior. What if somebody had died? Would he be able to go back to golf then?
I think it would depend on who died. I think if little kids died, it'd be much harder.
Yeah.
I think if an adult male died, I think it would be like maybe 5 years. But then it would be not as big a deal. I think that stuff really matters. It's weird that we care so much about result rather than process with this stuff, but we have always been like that. The NHL, whenever there's fights, if a guy like hits somebody and everything just goes on, they put a guy in the corner for 2 minutes, in the box for 2 minutes. If a guy hits someone and they're like knocked out and break their jaw and have brain damage, they sometimes sit the guy for 30 games or 50 games, and it's like, I don't understand. I mean, they're trying to kill each other in all situations, right? They're really trying to hurt each other most of the time. And so the only time the NHL comes in really heavy is when the result is such that, but we're sort of just rolling dice and like, oh, it came up 12. So you have to sit out for 30 games and lose all this money. And you go in the box for 2 minutes and no one thinks a thing of it. Like, but everyone's throwing punches and everyone's trying to hurt each other, more or less, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, it should be that we treat this stuff very intensely, but I mean, society does. Like, he spent the night in jail. There will be some penalties for him. They won't be a big deal. They'll be easy for him to navigate, I would think, being as rich and famous as he is. That's part of what you become rich and famous for, right? It's for that way, stuff like this, you have some lubricant for it, right? It's like not so bad.
When considering the potential of becoming rich and famous, I never think, in case I total my car in a way that's really embarrassing and illegal, I hope being rich and famous helps me. You know,
it's a catch-all. It's like, oh, the world's ending, and the president sends a plane for you because you're fucking Tiger Woods, and he wants someone to play. He wants to play golf with you, you know, in the bunker, not anyone else. You know, like, and also you get out of speeding tickets really easily, and also, you know, and there's a bunch of stuff where it's easier and better. I mean, I don't know. That's what it's like the third best reason to be famous, I think.
The third best.
Yeah, I mean the first two I think are pretty obvious.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Money and women.
Yeah, obviously. What other things would there be?
There's nothing else in the world. What about natural beauty? What about flowers that you could buy? You could buy lots of flowers. Anyway.
Great point.
To your point about not everybody who has these types of expectations and this type of pressure ends up like this, the immediate person that comes to mind is LeBron James, who's been anointed since he was in 7th grade as the greatest thing that ever existed. And a lot of people think he's arrogant, but I think actually considering the level of expectations and the actual living up to the expectations that he's done, he's actually not that arrogant for being the person in that body who has achieved these things. And he has definitely not done any of these things like Tiger Woods has done. And I think he's a good analogy to Tiger Woods because as far as like the level of success and the level of expectation for him. So I think that's a reasonable point. So the next part of what Jones was asking was how should society and, you know, leagues react to this? And you've touched on what you think will happen, but what do you think should happen, Jonathan?
I don't think for something like this that there should be a major penalty within the sport for this kind of an infraction. I agree with you that if the results were different, the penalties would be different. If someone was maimed, killed, it would matter. If a child lost their leg, I think he would be done for a long time. Versus if a guy like me, like broken arm or fractured a wrist, it wouldn't be that big a deal, you know?
Yeah.
Even though Tiger might have been driving the same way and just who happened to be in front of him or not at the time determines all that. But I do think that's how it works. And that's, weirdly enough, it kind of feels like that's how it should work, even though, because how are we supposed to determine how much care he's taken or not? We don't know. If people end up dead, we're like, he must have been taking very little care. In this situation, no one else got hurt. So there's a chance he was trying to take some care. We don't really have a sense of it. It's hard to know. But that's how we do it. It's not ideal, but I think it's reasonable, at least in this kind of scenario with him specifically. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. I do. And golf is different than other sports in that there's like multiple ways to revenue in golf that is a little bit different than if you're a basketball player, or a football player. There's just really like the one league, and, you know, golf has multiple paths. They even have that indoor stadium thing. I don't know if you guys have seen that. That's in like Atlanta. They have like the biggest simulator of all time, and they're doing actual prize money tournaments on it where they like change the ground to be different greens and stuff. It's pretty interesting and pretty cool. If you like golf, I don't really care about golf, but it's so like Tiger has been playing in that. He's got like a team or whatever. They have teams. So there's multiple revenue paths for golf that are different. And I think Tiger, and like there's like the seniors, which Tiger will be eligible for, or maybe already is. I'm not sure, relatively soon. And like, how fucking thrilled are they going to be when Tiger Woods plays the seniors? You know, they're going to love that. It's going to be amazing for them. Golf will never want Tiger Woods to go away. And I don't think this infraction is anywhere near something that would remove him from participating in major golf events. I don't think it's going to happen. Should we talk about some other incidents that have happened? Should we do some, maybe like some that we think are kind of funny? perhaps.
That'd be great.
I'm thinking of Plaxico Burress. I think the Plaxico Burress thing is kind of funny. For those who don't know, he was NFL wide receiver in like the early 2000s. I believe he was on the Giants at the time when this happened. Yep. And they were a good team. Like they were making Super Bowl runs. At least they were good in the playoffs, at least. Maybe not the regular season so much. But he was wearing sweatpants, and in his sweatpants pocket in the club had a gun that was loaded with the safety off and ended up shooting himself in the leg. So he was the only victim, but he was charged with, it was, I think it was an illegal, now this is one where we need to fact check if the firearm was legally registered or not. There was some reason that it was a big legal deal. Maybe it was just because he had it in the club.
You can't just carry weapons and firearms in New York, period, even if it's registered. So that was part of it. I remember that. I was in New York when it happened. I was living there in Brooklyn. So,
and this is a results thing too. The reason it's funny is the result is that he is the only one who got hurt. He shot himself in the leg by having a loaded safety off gun in his sweatpants, which is so fucking stupid. But if somebody else had gotten shot in the club, then it wouldn't be very funny, right? Like, and he wasn't like badly hurt either, so that makes it also because he like played football after that. So
I mean, he went to jail for 2 years. And then played football after that, to be clear. Like, this is like, it was sort of such a remarkable departure from the kinds of penalties we see society giving athletes when no one else gets hurt. Yeah. But New York has, I think, just sort of like a mandatory, if you're caught with a gun out, it's 2 years, like, period. Doesn't matter. So he just got that sentence, and that was it. It was like the end of it. And he served that time for real. And that was pretty crazy. I remember, again, living there at the time. It was nuts that it was really happening because it just seemed like that never happens, ever. I mean, he was walking around with a loaded gun in his sweatpants because he didn't think it was going to be a problem either. I'm sure he'd been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
He was like the best receiver on that team at the time, right? So it was a big deal for the team, too. So, I mean, that's only funny because of how dumb he looked, though. It's a results thing. So the law obviously had strict stuff in the state that he was in, and that's why the penalty was what it was. What do you think the NFL should have done in that situation? Should they have allowed him to continue to play or not?
I think absolutely they should have let him play. The NFL, I don't think sports leagues in general should be doing any kind of pejorative or penalties for societal behavior if society themselves is already doing things about it. Like, Plaxico went to jail for 2 years. He paid his debt to society, according to the state of New York, who's the ones who held him responsible for this. I don't see why he shouldn't be allowed to go back to his job and keep doing his job. Like, that seems very reasonable to me. If the public hated him, then the Giants would have to figure out, is it worth it to bring him back? If everyone hates him, maybe it's not. Maybe we sell less tickets and people don't buy as much merchandise in general, and we lose money, so we don't want to do it. But that wasn't the case, because everyone sort of had the same reaction you do, and everyone except Giants fans had, which was like, this is crazy, man. Yeah. And that was it. So no, I don't think there should have been any extra penalty from already serving 2 years. Again, way more than anyone else ever seems to get for doing often way worse things in the NFL that the NFL is very aware of. The NFL, I'm sure we're going to get to some of this, but like 6-game suspensions for horrific behaviors is the norm with the NFL. This was just an accident. I mean, he was breaking the law, but it was an accident.
When I think about some of the incidents of people who maybe are suffering from sort of addiction level, kind of like they're we know people who are struggling through addiction and they're doing stupid things and they're, continuing to seek that high. And you have people like, Josh Gordon in the NFL or Justin Blackmon in the NFL, or, people who are clearly suffering through addiction level things, but the league is cracking down on them. Similarly, you brought up weapons. Similarly, like Ja Morant, right? Just doing stupid things with guns, and the league is like, we can't really have this. But I don't know if anything Ja Morant was doing was illegal. It just looked bad for the league, right? And those people get huge crackdowns. They get like half season or full season bans. Some of them lost their entire careers due to those kinds of things. When you have also people that maybe, Jonathan, you're referring to, doing, in my mind, far worse things, like, you know, maybe like Ray Rice or, you know, some of those, you know, like domestic violence.
Bridges.
Like, yeah, exactly. And they're getting maybe lesser punishment than some of these other incidents. And I don't know if we want to talk about that.
This is the darkness.
Yeah,
that I
this
was
is the
expecting.
darkness. But is it fair for a league to police its own image over like the morality of the infraction, I guess?
Fair is an interesting question because we live in a capitalist society and these leagues are money-making ventures. They are nothing else at the end of the day. Like, so PR is their mandate. They have shareholders. They have people who want money from them that are the ones who have initially invested in them. So from a purely capitalist, like I'm a Dutch guy in 1685 perspective, like it's totally fair for them to do that from a PR perspective. From a societal perspective, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. Sports are woven into the fabric of society and are cultural touchstones. And, you know, Jonathan and I have talked about this on other podcasts. They help replace our tribal instincts to kill each other. So they have a lot of value. And I think they provide more societal value than maybe a lot of people think. And I do think it matters how the stars and not stars who become more famous because of the bad things they did are treated by the governing bodies of these sports and how society sees that happen. And I think it has the trickling effect on society. And so I think it does matter. I think they don't have any actual obligation under the current system that we live in capitalism and the way that they're trying to just maximize the amount of money that they can make. But I think from a moral perspective, there may be more obligation if they care to take on that obligation. What do you think, Jonathan?
I mean, coming back to Morant specifically here, my understanding, and I know we didn't get it deep into all the details of, if I recall correctly, it has been a number of years, that there was an incident with a gun. He met with Adam Silver. He was told this could never happen again. It happened again where he on a live stream flashed another gun and then he was suspended. I think, was it for a month? 30 games, something like that.
25
games. Yeah. So I can understand. First of all, I agree with you that the league is supposed to take care of itself. That's their job. Their job is not to take care of Ja Morant. And if Ja Morant is actively damaging the league, which clearly they felt he was, they have to do something to stop not just him from doing that, but from everyone else gets to see also that, like, this kind of behavior you can't just do. I think they really tried to just warn him, and it clearly didn't work, and so they had to escalate because clearly just saying, please stop, wasn't going to do it with Ja Morant, right? Ja Morant feels like a great candidate to be taken in an expansion draft if we were going to have one really soon.
Yeah.
You know, we're not. It's going to be like 3 or 4 years. So by then, who the hell knows where we're going to be with Ja Morant. But like if it was going to be right now, there's a world where the Grizzlies just let him go and he gets taken, you know, 5th overall or something like that.
Oh, he's
it's
first.
Wild. Well, he's making like $60 million a year and he might not be in the league for very long.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But he might be first because A, he's young and has been dominant, and B, you don't even need him to be great. If you could just have him get pretty good again, find some of that, like I'm the 10th best point guard in the league and stable, you could trade him for a whole bunch of stuff as this expansion team and really be somewhere on your way, or have a really good piece for another 5 years at your point guard. So it'd be amazing. But anyway, that's not happening because the expansion draft isn't going to happen for at least 3 years, right? So I feel ultimately that Ja kind of got what Ja deserved and needed to get. And I would be very concerned about him as a Grizzlies fan right now because it feels like he's not able to control himself for whatever his reason, or doesn't care to. Maybe he's able to, just doesn't care. He's rich. Maybe he doesn't feel like he needs all this stuff. And that's not crazy. It's not a crazy sentiment if you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And it's like, yeah, I don't want to do what they tell me to do. All right, they could never pay me again, and I'll have to live with $200 million instead of $500 million. It's okay. Like, that's a choice that he's really allowed to make, right? I would be very concerned as a Grizzlies fan, or whatever team he ends up on in the near future, because it feels like it's not crazy at all if he ends up getting traded, right? That, like, it wouldn't work out and he could be out of the league relatively quickly from here, or just be a disaster.
All right, let's bring the darkness in. Let's get to the darkness. Okay, so I mostly agree with you that John Morant got something that he could have avoided. And he was given warnings. In this specific case, maybe there are other cases where it's less fair. Mostly drug-related cases, especially in the more distant future when the leagues were more punitive about stuff like marijuana, which was always kind of ridiculous. But with Ja, I get that his behavior was repetitive and why the league felt like it was a PR necessity to do what they did. I think the question is not, did he get unfairly suspended? I think the question is, should people like Miles Bridges have gotten more of a suspension? And this is where the darkness comes in, because I think this is the type of behavior that Chris was referring to when he said there are things that are far worse. And my understanding, and again, I don't want to get it wrong, is that Miles Bridges beat the shit out of his wife. Like, it was bad. Like, the pictures that she took of herself are not pretty. And she filed charges, and it was a very serious incident. And I think he was suspended for a full year. Is that accurate? Or at least the remainder of the year that they were currently in, something like that.
Yeah, it was the remainder of the year. He was suspended for 30 games.
And then he was up for like a max contract at the end of that year, and he's faced some financial penalties in that he did not get a max contract, but he's still making tons of money. He's back in the league. He's back on the same team. Things are basically business as usual for Miles Bridges as a basketball player. Does that feel that feels a little bit incongruent to me with the John Morant thing? Maybe that's what you're touching on, Chris, because I see why John Morant's suspension
people
occurred.
Deserve similar punishments, basically.
No, I mean, obviously, in my mind, Miles Bridges deserves a far bigger punishment. Now, the league made a PR assessment, I guess, and this is where my discussion from earlier about, like, is there a moral obligation comes in. The league decided that the PR was fine to allow him back in the league at the time that they allowed him back in the league. Morals are an interesting thing. It's all relative. It's unclear if they actually exist, whatever. But my gut instinct is that Miles Bridges shouldn't be allowed to play basketball in the NBA ever again. Fuck that guy. That's my gut instinct on the situation. And maybe there's nuances to his case that I'm unaware of. I only read the headlines. I read the snippets. It's from what I saw back at the time, I was pretty disgusted. And it sounded like he was not very remorseful and felt like he was the victim in the situation. And it left a very bad taste in my mouth. He's got his wife that he was beating the shit out of. He's got kids that he was doing it in front of. Mm-hmm. It's a bad spot. Personally, what I would like to see as a fan of the NBA is him never play again. That's what I would like to see. I'm not sure if that's what's fair or not. I think people deserve multiple chances in life. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes bad behavioral mistakes. Some mistakes are more forgivable than others. I don't know if this is ever forgivable. I'm not sure if I could ever forgive this type of a mistake. Imagine if you knew this woman, if you were in this woman's family. Could you forgive him? And there's many similar incidents. But what do you think, Jonathan?
I think this is a really tough one.
Yeah.
So the league, I'm not an expert on the league rules with this stuff, to be clear, but if I recall, maybe Chris can check this as we're talking, but the NBA basically only has so many choices when they want to punish a player. So, like, based on the CBA, the agreement they have with the players already, they can only pick from a few things, right? So for this kind of a punishment, I think it's basically either like suspend him for the rest of the year or like ban him for life. Now, you're advocating ban him for life. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that there's a lot of middle ground for them based on the current agreements anyway. And so if that's the case, I can see where it's a tough spot for Adam Silver, where he's like, is it really fair to take out this kid's entire career over, as far as we know, and now maybe he did, I don't know. I would guess they've done investigations into this kind of stuff, so they have more information than we have, right? The NBA. But is it fair to like burn his entire career forever over this one thing? I agree that this is kind of a big thing. I wonder how many athletes are doing this that we never hear about, that, let's say, the league office does hear about, where they're able to sort of successfully cover it up.
I mean, we'll never know.
Things like that.
We'll never know.
Of course. But I'm saying, like, from Adam Silver's point of view, he may be like, I mean, like, 5% of the guys in the league are doing some version of this, and, like, I kind of know about it, but not enough to be able to do anything. But this is the one I know. So am I going to ban this guy for life and everyone else just gets like a free pass?
I mean,
That's
that might
weird.
just not
it feels
be
unfair.
true. That might
What?
just not be true, though. Like
It may not be true.
And I think it's probably not, because like these incidents loom large in
5%
our
is a big
minds.
number.
These incidents loom large in our minds, right? And when athletes do it, it's like a reminder that, oh, this is something that happens with athletes in the media with some frequency. So I think it makes us believe that it happens with a higher percentage of them than it does because of the availability of the information. And it does not necessarily indicate that it happens with that many people. I don't think we can make that assumption.
That's fair. That's completely fair. At the same point, it would be naive to believe that athletes' crimes are not being covered up at times by local police, right? The Dallas
all
police,
famous people. Let's be clear.
of course, but we're just talking about athletes right
Yeah.
now. But you're right, all famous people. But like, so that would lead me to believe, and I don't know about domestic violence specifically, although I would guess that would probably be part of it too, that like these are things that at times people look the other way or give them a stern warning, at the local level only. And, they get tickets and get to meet the team. And so it's fine, like lots of that kind of stuff I'm sure happens. Now, I don't have a sense of what level of heinous crimes are happening or not happening. And you're right. It's irresponsible to say, like, I threw out 5%.
Yeah.
Sort of not with having no sense of it. It's irresponsible to say that because who knows? It may be 0.5%. It may be 0.05%. I don't really know. But I do think it's naive to think it's 0% also. It seems unlikely to me, right?
Well,
that
I
somewhere
agree,
there's a lot of
with
guys, they're big, if they get angry, I mean, what are the percentages on domestic violence anyway in this country? If you just take those percentages and apply them more or less, I mean, it's going to be like, it could be bad fast.
I mean, that's fair. And to your point, domestic that makes me think domestic violence is one of the most underreported crimes because the victims often are feeling shame and don't want to report. And the reason this came to light was because the wife reported. But anyway, so based on everything you've said, I understand how the league office is in the spot. I still want him out for life. Based on the information that I know. Jones, where are you standing on all this?
That's how I felt about, like, certainly as a fan of a team, like, I don't want that guy on my team. Like, I don't want,
I agree.
same, like there was talk about when the Wolves were in conversation about, is Giannis coming to the Wolves? Like, there's some talk about, well, maybe Kevin Porter Jr. might be part of that deal too. And he has a similar sort of incident in his history that I just find disgusting. And I don't want to have to like see that guy on my team. I don't want to ever cheer for him. I don't want to ever, and it would actually make me actively not watch the team if that happened. And so like, I think it's actually maybe good for the league to think about that too. Like it isn't just about this one guy's career, but if they're worried about their own like perception when somebody's just waving a gun on social media, like, yeah, maybe that's not ideal. And he has been warned, but I'd rather have that guy on my team than I would have the, domestic abuser, I guess.
And I think that echoes the general sentiment by most of the population. Most of the population finds the domestic abuser to be a more reprehensible action than whatever John Morant was doing with his dumb fucking friends, like being an idiot. Like that's
For sure.
Right.
It's not nearly as reprehensible.
I remember back in the day when Ruben Patterson was on the Seattle Supersonics. So this is pre-Oklahoma City moving. He was a small forward, and he sexually assaulted his babysitter and then was a free agent like a year later. By the way, again, this is a long time ago. I hope I'm getting these facts right because I'm saying it as if it's 100% Chris. Maybe you could check me on that to make sure that I'm not.
Yeah, we don't want to
say
disparage
something that's
anybody's
really
name.
unfair to Ruben Patterson.
Yeah.
I believe that is correct, but maybe you should make sure. Let's do that. But I remember that at the time he was a free agent, and there was like an article in the Boston Globe about maybe the Boston Celtics will pick him up. We could use a small forward. And I remember thinking, if they pick him up, I'm completely done. Like, there's no way I'm going to be a fan of this team. That's way too far for me. Like, that's miles too far. So I agree with you that both you guys that like there's lines that, as far as I'm concerned, if my team wants to have that, I just won't root for that team anymore. Like, I don't care. Like it's It's the end for me. And so I can see why the NBA would take that stuff very seriously as a result. The question for the NBA is, what's fair and what isn't? They do have some nuance that we don't have about, in this case, the Miles Bridges situation. But all these things, because they definitely have way more facts than we do. So when we just look at it from the headlines, it's easier to sort of pick things as more black and white. Like, this is how it should be, and be more binary with it, where there might be a lot more gray, even though it doesn't feel like it. I agree with this example. But that doesn't mean there isn't. Chris, did you look that up?
It did. And he was charged with attempted rape, and he was charged and convicted of it.
Okay, so that's so I would say
pretty close. Yeah, pretty close.
I was fair. I was fair to Ruben Patterson with that one. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for checking that.
So I think I kind of want to shift us a little into talking about sort of the way leagues and we think about game integrity and cheating and sort of different levels of cheating, whether that's performance enhancing drugs or some of the scandals we've seen in the last few years between like Spygate, the Astros Stein stealing, the Saints Bounty Gate, all the kinds of things that have come up over time, as well as, multiple professional athletes who have been brought the hammer down for using performance enhancing drugs. So this is really about not their behavior societally at large, but their behavior on the court and like how they're affecting game integrity. And that seems to be a space where the hammer is brought down pretty hard, although it's more brought down on the individual than it is on the team, it seems like. What are your thoughts on that kind of infraction?
As 1685 Dutch guy, I think it makes sense. Like that is the league's purview. That is what they're supposed to do, is protect the game integrity to whichever way they see fit. Now, of course, they're most likely not protecting the game integrity as their first goal. They're protecting their PR as their first goal. And they think that the game integrity is important for their PR. So they might make some decisions that are a little bit different than if they were simply trying to purely protect the integrity of the game. But I do think that it makes more sense for them to be more punitive about things that are explicitly in the rules about the game that the athletes are playing versus about their life outside of the game.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with almost everything you said, actually. I think about Major League Baseball and how they don't care at all about cheating. Like, clearly, they've shown they do not care. They have penalties for some kinds of cheating, but like they let the Astros keep the world championship somehow when the Astros clearly cheated.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Like it's irrefutable that they cheated, right? That is insane to me that they wouldn't do something about that. Essentially, nothing happened, and we just all moved on. And I was already no longer a fan of baseball, but that would have done it for me.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what the hell, man? It's wild to me that could be the case. For things like performance-enhancing drugs, that is much less of an infraction, clearly, in a lot of ways. I personally don't really care if people are using performance-enhancing drugs. I think the problem is that it's bad for health, and so it's bad for humans. So that's a reason to not allow it. I support that. But the idea that somehow it's unfair to the other athletes, I'm like, everyone's like going for every edge they can. There's so much money involved, at least in some of these sports, maybe not cycling, except at the very top. I mean, Lance Armstrong did pretty well, but, with like football or baseball or any of the big team sports where there's millions and millions of dollars, it's the incentives only line up for these players to do this. Like, you kind of have to do it. That's the way it used to be in Major League Baseball. Baseball knew about it and didn't care, right? They did not care until the media started making a big deal out of it during the Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa home run chase back in the day. And that started to change the attitudes around it. And then now they act like they care a lot. But I don't think they care now either. I really don't. The place where it matters the most is not where the players are trying to be the best versions of themselves so they can be the best player they can be. The place where it's problematic is when people are taking actions that are not congruent with that, right? Where you're losing on purpose, you're shaving points. Yeah. Bountygate is kind of an interesting example of that as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Things that feel anti-competitive. That aren't truly competitive. This goes, NBA tanking. This is why tanking is such a problem with the NBA, and the NBA is trying to very publicly fix it, right? Because it's fucking with the competition. And as you said, Grant, the competition is the whole thing they're selling. Otherwise, it's like soap opera, and no one's going to fucking watch, and it's the end of all the billions of dollars in TV revenue that they're making. It's all over if no one thinks it's real, right? So they have to protect that at all costs.
Talk to professional wrestling. They're doing pretty well.
They're doing okay.
Yeah.
But they're not doing NFL, and they're not doing NBA, and they're not doing MLB.
Right. And I agree with everything you said about that. With there's also the question with performance-enhancing drugs is where do we draw that bright line of what counts as a performance-enhancing drug? You're enhancing your performance by going to the weight room and lifting weights. That's like step A of enhancing your performance. Where do we draw the line? I could see it being different with different sports too, because there are a huge set of skills required to hit a baseball out of a park, right? But there's a much more direct correlation between the performance-enhancing drugs and cycling success. It's like you're just going as fast as you can. Of course, there's some nuance to cycling that's not just going as fast as you can and being as strong as you can, but there's been a proven 8 to 10% difference in the speed that you can achieve, like a Tour de France level cycling, with the performance-enhancing drugs that Lance Armstrong and others were using at the time. So I could see how you would want to get that out of cycling or just let everybody do it. It has to be fair one way or the other. So I get that. It's a little bit tougher with other sports because there's a less direct correlation between success and the drugs. But yes, I agree with Jonathan completely that the things that are like actually hurting the integrity of the game through cheating the mechanisms of the game, either in order to lose on purpose or to try to gain an advantage and gain information that you're not supposed to have as a team or something, I think those are more problematic for sure.
I will say one thing about PEDs, which even though I'm on the side of like, who cares? The one problem is, let's say with cycling, is that if you want to be competitive, you have to take them, right?
Yeah.
So you're sort of forced to do these things to your body just because you love cycling and you want to be one of the best cyclists in the world. Otherwise, you can't be competitive with the best guys. So it's almost like that's a fair reason to want to get it out of the sport, right? Because it's so unfair to be like, I love this sport. I'm great at this sport, but I can't ever be in the top 10 unless I knock 5 years off my life or 10 years off my life. That seems insane, right? So that's the other side of it, and that's a very reasonable side.
For sure.
One more thing on game integrity. Let's talk about just gambling in general. Gambling is this weird spectrum where you can be somebody like the Raptors player, Jonte Porter, who's now banned for life and was, actively wagering on his own performance, something he'd have total control over and knowledge of, versus somebody like Calvin Ridley on the Falcons who was betting on other teams on a bye week, where, it's just like he might have some inside knowledge because he plays in the league, but it's not like his own team and his own performance. The leagues tend to crack down pretty hard on both of those sort of incidents pretty hard. And what do you think about, is there a distinction there, or is that you just can't allow any of this because otherwise you start to get Jonte Porter type situations?
I think there's clear distinctions between them, but I also think the league has to treat it with a bright line around it and say, like, you do this. Because I remember when this happened with Pete Rose. And the Pete Rose defenders are like, he never been on the team to lose. And it's like, man, that is not the point. He was the manager. If he knows he's got to win this game tonight, he's going to use all his bullpen. He's going to do everything he can. He'll run his pitchers ragged to make sure he wins tonight. And who cares about tomorrow's game, right? And he won't bet on that game now, right? That's like, that absolutely affects all these things, all these competitive things. So it sounds good, but it still messes things up. With something like Calvin Ridley, where he's betting on other teams, it's harder to see that clear distinction, or distinction. That's not the right word. To see that clear like line or connection. But that doesn't mean there isn't one. If he knows all these players, he went to school with some of these players, he's good friends with them. I don't know. He might have some influence. It's not impossible. He might know things that no one else knows. And you're saying inside information as if it's no big deal. But actually, it is a big deal. And you're really not supposed to ever profit from inside information in these situations because you're actively, essentially stealing from companies when you're doing that, right? Like he's stealing from FanDuel if he has inside information that you're not supposed to have when you bet, right? Now, we can say, who cares about FanDuel? They're a big corporation. That's very reasonable. But it still is theft, ultimately, right? And that's not okay. The bigger problem is, of course, that any whiff of this kind of stuff is so bad for these leagues. Because, again, the idea that players may not be giving their 100% at all times is anathema to fans loving the sport. Even with tanking in the NBA, you never hear anyone say the players aren't trying to win. Everyone's very careful to say the players are all trying to win all the time. The players are giving 100%. And I think that is true, to be clear.
Yeah, me too.
The front offices are trying to lose, and they put the players in bad situations. But the players themselves are never trying to actively lose. And that does seem to be almost always true. Mm-hmm. But they really make sure we know that, right? Because that's very different than like, oh, the players are actively fucking up, and it's a big show. It's like the Harlem Globetrotters against the Washington Generals now instead of the Thunder against the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is definitely a difference between the Jontay Porter situation and the Calvin Ridley situation. We can't assume insider information about Calvin Ridley. You don't have to be an athlete to have insider information. You could just be friends of Deshaun Watson. Yeah. You could just know that guy. Speaking of incidents, but we don't need to get into that one. Whatever. So, like, insider information is going to be traded on in sports betting. It just is. There's nothing you can do about it. It's when you actively change the way you play that matters more, I think. With Jontay Porter, who, by the way, dumbest scheme ever is like, I'm the 9th guy on the Raptors. I'm going to bet $40,000 on the under on my points. Who's doing that? How many like player unders are you betting on Jontay Porter as a casual fan? Give me a fucking break. Like, that's so dumb. But so I think obviously that's different. You're trying to change the outcome of the game based on how you go into the game knowing I'm going to actively change the outcome of this game because I want to win the money, versus Calvin Ridley knowing that, like, I don't know, some other receiver in the NFL has a tweaked leg that nobody's talking about in the media. And he's like, well, maybe he will catch a few fewer passes. Maybe it gives me a 0.5% better chance to win this bet by betting over here. It's not nearly the same thing in my mind. And I think the league should treat it differently.
They were treated differently, though. They were different leagues. But, like, Calvin Ridley was suspended for, like, a year, which is still a shockingly long time.
Yeah.
I remember really being surprised. And Jontay Porter's out forever.
Yeah.
Right? So there is a line. But at the point, the bottom line is sort of like, don't do any of it because we really have very heavy penalties, even for what seems like more minor stuff like you're talking about, Grant.
Just quick question, and this is just speculation. If it wasn't Jontay Porter, okay, if it was Zion Williamson, would he be out forever?
Let's make it bigger than that.
If it was
Zion's not
LeBron
a big
James,
enough guy.
fine.
Yeah, what if it's Nikola Jokic, right?
Yeah.
Like, what if it's Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? These are the real questions.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Would the league really
I think
make
they
them
get
out
a year.
forever?
I think they get a year, not a lifetime ban. Maybe. I don't know.
if Shea's betting the under on Shea,
Yeah, maybe
and they
he does
already
get
kick,
banned for
they
it.
kick Jontay out, and they kick Jontay out forever, you can't give him a year for that and tell everyone, right?
What
You-
if Jontay
you
didn't
can't.
happen, though? I'm saying instead of Jontay, so they don't have a precedent, right? Like,
Then if they don't have a president, they're going to give Shea a year.
yeah, for
And,
sure.
They're not going to kick him out for life.
Yeah.
But now that they have a precedent, I think they do have to kick him out for life.
Yeah.
I don't know what else. I don't know what other move there is. They could try and cover it up, but that's a bad idea because eventually that stuff gets out a lot of the time, and then you're screwed.
I mean,
right?
they're pretty
You do
well
better.
protected. They're pretty well protected from this happening, right? Because people like Shea and Jokic are making so much money that it would be like it was idiotic for Jontay Porter to do it based on the amount of money that he was making, even. But like, it's hard to imagine that they would ever be like, I need to like bet 60,000 on my under. I make $280 million on this contract. Like,
You're assuming that people are doing it to win for the money, though, as opposed
yes,
to
I
for
am.
the action, and maybe like, and the money still doesn't mean it isn't meaningful, even if they have a big contract because A, they may not get nearly as much of that money as we think. B, a lot of them are living paycheck to paycheck.
No, in the NBA they do. They're guaranteed.
No.
Contracts.
In the NBA, whenever there's a strike, the players all run out of money immediately because they don't have any savings. They're all living paycheck to paycheck. They've got these huge payouts they're doing every month for their house and all their cars and all their stuff. Very few players really have this all put together. It always happens that, and this is true in the NFL too, that essentially the strikes fall apart and the owners always win on the strikes because the players never have enough money to be able to last.
That's not all the players. You think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander couldn't last through a 2-year strike? I contend that he could. I contend that he could.
It's a lot of it's a high percentage of the players. It's more than half. How about that? Like run out of money quickly.
I think that may have been true. That may have been true 20 years ago. Salaries are so much bigger now. I'm not sure if that's true.
They are a lot bigger.
You think Colby White's running out of money? Like he's making what, $18 million a year? You think Colby White's running out of money over 2 years?
I think it's very possible he is running out of money.
I don't.
2 years.
I
think you are really underestimating what lifestyle creep does. Like all Colby White is surrounded by is by really rich guys spending lots of money and showing off all the time, and he gets $18 million a year. But really, after taxes and agents, now we're down to $10 million a year. That's still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. That should be fine. But if you have to have the newest everything all the time and the nicest car and the best jewelry it goes fast, man. It goes real fast.
Neither of us really know the answer on this one, obviously, as to how likely that really is. Anyway, I think we've gotten a bit off topic here.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, and I that's kind of through everything I had to cover, except we didn't get to touch on Chauncey Billups, so I think we need to.
Oh yeah. Well, he's a multiple cases problem guy, right? Like he has a rape accusation. There's no conviction, I don't think. There might be a civil suit that he lost or something like that. We would need to check up on that, but there's no legal action against him. But him and other Boston Celtics in the early 2000s were accused of sexual assault. I think it was the language used. He then became, a champion on the Pistons and subsequently the Trailblazers coach 20 years later. And then the whole poker thing happened, which he was a part of these setup games, which is very interesting to consider that he was trying to make this little amount of money. It seems like based on the amount of money that he's got, maybe he had the lifestyle creep happen. And maybe he was in debt to the mob. That's just speculation. That's me speculating. But the mob was involved in that, so it seems to make some sense that he was a face, right? They called him a face
He's a great example, though.
Yeah.
He's a great example of what we were talking about, where you can have a huge salary, and you're like, man, I'm going to make $80,000 tonight if I do this thing. I'm going to do it. I think that's pretty good. A lot of people are going to say yes to an easy $80,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it back to end this thing about the specific case of Tiger Woods, and this happens with other athletes. Sometimes it goes way worse, like with Leonard Little or Henry Ruggs III, where people actually die from them driving under the influence or driving recklessly. I don't even know if Henry Ruggs was under the influence. He was just driving 160 miles per hour. But it's the common point that I hear when these things happen, when people are talking about it, is like, and I tend to agree with it, is how can these people with all of this money be driving their own cars when they're intoxicated? You don't have to be rich to have a limo service anymore. Like, they are rich. They could have an at all times limo service if they want to have the lifestyle creep. It's like a guy that you always call. Or you could just use Uber or Lyft. That's pretty easy too. Like, I can't believe that this stuff happens so frequently. Like, you get drunk at the club, you get drunk at the golf course, whatever, and your Porsche Cayenne Turbo is in the parking lot. I'm pretty sure they're going to let you leave that overnight. Call a car. Like, you have so much money. I don't understand how most people in the world end up getting DUIs, honestly, but especially when you have this much as far as resources. It's just crazy to me that a person like Tiger Woods has had this happen twice. I can't believe it, that it happened a second time, honestly. How do you make that decision? I don't know.
I think, as you said, a lot of people do this all the time. In most cases with athletes, they're not very old. They're like 23, 24, 25 years old, almost always under 30. They have way more money than they I mean, now it's a little different with NIL. They actually are more used to being millionaires than they ever were before. I mean, they're getting that. I imagine there's going to be more issues that, for 19-year-olds now in college still, because they're going to be rich and doing crazy things. But someone like Henry Ruggs, you sign this big deal. It's the first time you're suddenly a millionaire. You're not prepared for this at all. No one has trained you how to do this. You don't know who you can trust. Everyone's coming to you all the time. You're trying to show off. You got lots of status things you're doing with your car and your this and your jewelry and your that, all these things. And you just make lots of bad decisions. And it's just one of them. It's just one of a huge pile of bad decisions that these guys make. And so I don't know if they have the ability, especially, again, as a 23 or 24-year-old who've only ever really focused on their sport, at least for the last several years of their life, being excellent at that. And it's worked out really well for them to do that. But they are not prepared for all the other stuff that you have to have. I mean, as you said, people who don't have that fuck up all the time when in their early and mid-20s, let alone also you have this, and people are letting you off the hook constantly. You rarely suffer consequences for your actions. So I can understand thinking like, why would I not do this thing? Of course I'm going to do it. Like, it's going to be fine. And mostly it is probably. And then once in a while, you're Henry Ruggs, and it's too far. Yeah. And no one's going to look away, and no cop is going to be like, you're fine, you're on the Raiders. They're like, get in the back of the fucking car, buddy. You're done. So... By the way, we didn't even mention some of there's so many other things we have not brought up.
We don't have time for all of this.
Ray Caruth.
Of
we
course.
Bring up Ray Caruth. Ray Rice, of course, is always looming there. Pistorius, anyone?
Pistorius? Anyone? Pistorius? Pistorius?
I didn't even have legs. He didn't have legs.
Antonio Brown, Adrian Peter. It's just, it's a...
Adrian Peterson's a really good one. Really good one, right? That guy did not think he was doing anything wrong. He was... very comfortably telling people about it and owning it, and still got suspended for a year.
Patrick Caden.
That was pretty interesting. As opposed to Ray Rice for his six games for Ray Rice. Of course, he never played again.
Any other thoughts on this matter?
It strikes me, listening to you, I'll just leave this at this for the last thing, that you were mentioning the CBAs and the leagues sort of like maybe the commissioners need more discretion in these matters. And like, I know why the CBAs are negotiated the way they are, but like when your options are this level of ban or lifetime ban and you don't have discretion in between, you're going to these things are going to start to seem equal in the eyes of people watching them, right? Because like, well, I don't want to pull this huge lever because that's too much, but I don't have anything in between. And that seems like when I was listening to this conversation, the thing that struck me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I remember back when Tom Brady had the Deflategate scandal back in the day. They suspended him for 4 games for that. And that was, I think, right around the Ray Rice thing, when Ray Rice suspended for 6 for his thing, and Brady had 4 for Deflategate, which a lot of quarterbacks were pretty open. Aaron Rodgers at the time were very open that they were doing that. It was like very common practice in the NFL, and it was sort of an odd thing that had happened, and it seemed like out of whack, like wildly out of whack, those two things. And I don't know how. I would love it if there was a way to avoid that out of whackness that we are getting pretty consistently, but I don't know what you do. Like, part of it is also just there's a disagreement about how important some of these infractions are, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think if you punch someone really hard in the face, you should be in a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. But I think in general, most sports don't really care about that. Not really. They suspend you for a game, and that's it. But I think it should be a bigger deal because once in a while you punch someone in the face and they get really badly hurt, and then everyone freaks out. So I would like it if they were stronger about that, But that's not what they do. But for example, the NBA does care about the big brawl stuff. So if you come off the bench when there starts to be a fracas, that's a huge deal, Mm-hmm. And even if it's Game 7 of the playoffs, if they have video of you coming off the bench, you are out for that game, no matter what, like automatically. You take half a step onto the thing. So there's some stuff they're really on top of. I'm curious to see, when we're talking about game integrity, what Adam Silver is going to do, because we're getting close to the time when this Kawhi Leonard salary cap thing is going to finally be dealt with by the NBA. I'm guessing it's going to be after the season, but probably before next season. And I think it's going to be a doozy. I think they're going to come hard after them. I think they should. They should probably kick Ballmer out of the league. I don't think they're going to do that, but they should.
He's their richest owner. They're not going to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, he could buy and sell all of them, right? But they should probably get rid of him.
Yeah. Anyway, that's that. Tiger Woods did it again, and it led to that discussion.
Classic Tiger.
Yeah.
I gotta chip away at the work. I got a bigger play to rehearse. I gotta live today like I'm in the race. Show the world I know my own worth. Heavyweight to burden, I persevere. Been persevering since birth. Fight for what we deserve until we reunite Mother Earth. We're rewriting the rule book, rewiring our brains, deep diving the framework. Yeah, we can be the change. Future's ours to claim if we grab it by